Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast episode 40. I'm Tom Merritt. And joining us today to predict the future are Darren Kitchen of Hack 5. Welcome, Darren.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you. He's busily working the predictions in his mind right now, I can tell.
Yes. It's like watching a defrag, to be honest.
Did you predict that I would say that?
No.
Also joining us, longtime friend, former coworker, the co-host of Buzz Out Loud and Android Atlas? I want to make sure.
Android Atlas Weekly. It's on the Android Atlas blog, but, you know, we threw the weekly in there just to make it even more confusing.
Mr. Jason Howell. Hello, Jason.
Thanks for inviting me on. This is awesome, you guys. I love the show.
Oh, this is going to be great. We are really looking forward to this.
There's one more thing about Jason we should mention. He is the tallest in the room, I believe. I believe he has the most height in the show today, which is rare. I'm usually the lerp here, so welcome.
So how tall are you normally then, if you don't mind me asking, Scott?
6'4".
Normally?
Oh,
Normally
please.
6'4". Today, 5'9".
That would be 6'8" for me. So yes, you're right. I cast a shadow over all of you.
If you put Darren and I on top of each other, we're still not as tall as Jason.
We would not like to
That's
do that.
true.
Especially if you do it horizontally. Ugh. All right, let's take a prediction from a listener to get us started off. Toyota Boy, who's obviously a fan of Audi, sent in an email to fourcastpodcast@gmail.com, said, I predict that eventually all products will put aesthetics aside and go square-shaped. So much space is wasted when things have interesting shapes, particularly spheres. Soda will be in cube-shaped cans. Fruit will be grown inside boxes, forcing them to take a cube shape like Japan is already doing. You look at the iPhone, the Scion XB, all squarish shapes that optimize maximum space. This is where we're headed. He also wanted us to segue into an ad then, but we don't have an ad today.
Nice.
Well, it's an odd email, first of all. Second of all, I kind of see where he's coming from. I'm looking around here, and I've got some, I mean, you know, I have this skull, right? It kind of watches over everything I do.
Oh, I thought you meant your own head. You meant that one. For audio listeners, he's holding an actual skull in his hand. Yeah,
I don't want this to be square. That's all I'm saying. I need some variety in my life. What he's talking about is a utopian future for boring people. I'm not interested in his future.
Certain things need that abstract, somewhat round, oval-shaped, whatever, abnormally shaped kind of thing to them. And they don't all work in the square. What I'm wondering, though, is I understand what this guy's saying, is that, you know, things kind of fit together better when they're square, but they also fit together just as well if they're not necessarily square, but maybe rectangle. As long as they have four flat sides that are all, you know, perpendicular to each other for the most part. I mean, you're able to pack in even more potentially there.
So a stackable future is what you like.
Yeah, exactly. Very organized, row by row type thing. That's what I gathered from his email, anyways.
I just like to picture what a Scion XB would look like if it was a square instead of a rectangle.
Yes,
I think it would be really cute.
Yeah,
especially with the square wheels.
Yes, yes.
Could be
a little bumpy of a ride.
The word circle could be reassigned.
Like when Link went to Tetris Land.
Yeah, triangles could be called something else. We could
get more squircles.
Oh, you know, it's been a long time since I've heard the squircle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let us move into our short-term predictions. These are predictions of what we think will happen in the next few years. Could be in your area of expertise. Could be sci-fi stuff you see in the pipeline. Whatever you want. These are a little more practical, though. Jason Howell, we will start with you. What do you see in the near term, Mr. Howell?
The pressure is on. All right. Well, I had a couple, but I'm just going to pick right off the top here. And it's what I like to call the retro web, which maybe to some degree is kind of happening right now. But, you know, you take a look back in like things like fashion and whatever, and what's old becomes new again. In the 90s, it was all the cardigan sweaters from years before, and that became all fashionable with grunge. And you had the 2000s and the 70s, kind of, you know, the early 2000s anyway. There was like this resurgence of like 70s fashion and disco wear and stuff like that, the kitschy thing. And the 80s seem to be coming back right now, which is kind of depressing. But you see a lot of those, you know, Tom Cruise style Ray-Bans all over the place. Ray-Bans are everywhere right now. I don't know why. I think that the retro web is going to come back. I think that you're going to take a look at the web, and I'm not really quite sure how far into the future this happens, because I still think it's kind of early. We still want a certain level of usability, and I think that we're raising our level every single year with how we turn the internet and make it even more useful. And I guess going into the retro web makes things a whole lot less useful. But I think there will be some sort of fascination with the kitsch behind revisiting old design and old eyesores and blink tags and things like that, and kind of bringing it back.
This is pretty fascinating, because I was just thinking about this idea, not about necessarily the web, but the idea that, like, the 80s have become, to sort of touch on your note about the 80s have become what the 50s became to us in the 80s. Kind of this very simplified, you know, hoop skirts and greasers and you know, cigarette packs and sleeves, and basically the movie grease is what that all became for us. And now the 80s have kind of boiled themselves down to that, and it's being presented back to us in a very simplified, sort of stereotypic package of a decade. Yep. And the idea that we could go or one day see the web as, oh, remember the days when video looked like crap and it was less than VGA. Or remember the days when 2400 baud modems meant that pictures were, you know, 64 colors maximum, and we start seeing that sort of come back again. Is probably not as far-fetched as I think right now, because my inclination is to say, no, these are, you know, we get past this. Nobody's driving, you know, Ford's original car. But then I'm reminded, no, actually there are people driving that car. People are interested in that stuff, so probably it'll go the same way. There's
people reenacting the Civil War, for heaven's sakes. I mean, I think you will definitely. I think we're already seeing this. I think that's one of the fascinations with all of this 8-bit stuff. The 8-bit version of Twilight was like a big viral hit on the internet recently, and I think it's that retro sense.
And I think that retro becomes much shorter in internet years. I mean, it was only today that I was listening to on BOL them talking about killing off the kin, and I was just thinking immediately, oh my God, now I need a kin.
Yeah,
that is just going to be.
It's an instant collector's item, and it was out like four months ago.
Like I would totally rock that like next week and be like, "Yo, I got a kin."
Yeah, remember back when the kin was cool?
Remember the kin? That was like a week ago. Wow.
Yeah, I love those days.
What Tom said. So, just from a gamer's perspective, video games have already made this jump backwards. They've decided that a lot of sort of independent development stuff coming out on like PSN, 360 Live Arcade, on computers, on handhelds, these small little $5, $6 games, even stuff on the App Store, are in the vein of kind of this 8-bit throwback. And there's some really great stuff being made. I would point to Cannibalt as an example. That game looks like an 8-bit Nintendo game, but it's so retro cool that it's new again, and that's already happened in that space. So it's just a matter of, you know, of time before the internet decides it wants to get all retro kitsch.
On that line, I got to throw out their Bit Trip on the Wii. You've got to play it.
Yeah, that game is that we're talking like Atari love in that game. It's crazy. Great game. Best Wii game in years.
Yes.
There, I said it.
So, obviously a supported prediction, Jason.
Yeah, I suppose so. Though when you start talking about video games, it starts to make I just start thinking about how video games have always kind of had this element of fun to them. So even going back to old games, you still have a certain level of difficulty and a level of fun that's still there, even if they are outdated. I guess what challenges this theory, though, and if I do go, you know, take a step backwards a little bit, is that, like I said, the web is all about getting more and more efficient and more usable. And thinking about going backwards in time to a web of yesterday, or going back to 300 baud days when, you know, text printed on the screen like it would on a really slow dot matrix printer, like that just isn't very usable, and nor is it very fun, especially when you get used to the new way and the new speed. So maybe it's outlandish, but I like to think that we'll have a little bit of that.
Here's how I would look at that. Here's a great way to look at it, I think. If you're going to have an 80s retro party today, you're going to be using Foursquare. You're going to be using your iPhones and your Droid phones. You're going to be hooking up in ways that you couldn't have hooked up 25 years ago. It just didn't exist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're dressing like a bunch of freaks. You're doing the whole 80s thing. All I'm saying is, when you talk about retro on the web, what you're really talking about is a portal, or let's call it a website that gets up on the internet that is filled with this kind of retro stuff. And the way it works is, you want to know how this particular BBS version ran in 1992? We're going to imitate the whole thing for you in JavaScript or something. You're going to experience it, and how long it took to get the Doom 1 demo off this stupid service and all this kind of stuff. If you can replicate those experiences, but still have the sort of, okay, I'm out of that, I'm into this, I'm quickly over here, I'm quickly over there, and the underlying technology is sort of being driven by today, I think you could drive a really fun retro experience on the web.
And I mean, the Internet Archive kind of strives to do that right now, but it is also incomplete too. Like, if you really dive in there and you want to go in and check out the forums, or follow this link or that, some of them work, some of them don't. It's not quite a complete experience. So maybe that's what this will be.
I see what you're saying about emulating the old experience with the new technology, and we do much the same with the Hack5 bulletin board system that you can like telnet to. But it's still not the same, because the text doesn't show up character at a time. It's just, I don't know what we would have to. We'd probably have to put some stuff in place in the connection to actually throttle it back far enough that it would.
I pretty much get all my Twitter over Gopher these days. Just,
really?
Just this
They've got a
retro thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Go gopher.floodgap.com/1/fun/twitfer. TWITPHER.
He's not lying, folks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm looking at my, and then you can put a question mark in somebody's username, and it'll bring up just their feed.
Good stuff.
So you can follow people on Twitfer.
Yeah.
It's the only way I look at Twitter. Seriously.
Kind of kitschy.
It's not really, seriously. All right, let's move over to Mr. Kitchen. Darren Kitchen, your short-term prediction, next few years, could be in your area of expertise or not, doesn't matter. What do you see in our near-term future, sir?
I don't know how many years it's going to take, but near-term, what I see is solid-state taking over in the consumer space, hard drives, and you're just not going to see them in the worlds that we live in. Maybe spinning disks will continue in some capacity in data centers.
Kind of like tape drives still exist.
Exactly like tape drives exist.
But we don't see them in the consumer.
More or less for archive purposes. Yeah. But the reason being is, the only thing that that we've had as selling points on new disks these days has been, it's bigger, but we're still spinning at 72 or 1500 RPM. So while the read speeds have gotten slightly better, SSDs have the ability to just go leaps and bounds further. And what's going to happen in umpteen years when the disk space gets to the point where it's like, all right, and I'm not trying to say that we'll ever need less disk space in any sort of future, but you'll get to the point where the average consumer is happy with, I don't know, maybe 5,000 terabytes or something, right? And they're like, all right, I got my 5,000 terabyte hard drive, but how does Hitachi, how does Samsung and everybody come out with the next drives that entice you to actually upgrade when you've got plenty of space? And I think that in the same way that we saw with the way that the CD-ROM came out, hey, you can put 650 megabytes on this disk, right? And then we had the 2x, and we had the 4x, and we went all the way to 48x, and it will go to speed, and it will go to speed in the same way. And I think that the way that you would explain it to the consumer is to do the 48x. And that's a really easy thing to grasp. It's like, well, then do I go with the 30x or the 48x? I don't know. So, and then the way that I feel like furthermore from that is, well, maybe, okay, so it's 5 terabytes at 40x, or you could have 10 terabytes at 20x, and kind of like have like a slider in the
It's actually
setup,
no different than what we have now, where it's like, I can get my 500 gigabyte drive at 5400, or my 650 gigabyte or 7200 RPM,
right, or
my 650 gigabyte at 5400 RPM. Am I willing to trade off the speed?
Yes, but to a much greater extent. In fact, you even see people putting solid-state disks in RAID arrays now, but I just kind of feel like all of that underlying technology where you have to go into the BIOS and set up a special card and all of this stuff to put together this pretty RAID and then deal with all of the headaches that might have to do with your operating system living on it, it'll just kind of be transparent to the user. You'll just have your 3.5-inch or your 2.5-inch drive. That's a 40x. It's a 500 terabyte whatever, 5,000 terabyte whatever, and you just kind of, in the slider, just like, how fast, choose that performance right there.
5 petabyte drive?
5 petabyte drive. Yeah, that's,
so
there you go.
They'll look at it like they look at drives now. Not so much what Tom said, but if I want to go get a drive now, I go, well, am I going to need 500 gig? I mean, a terabyte for what I'm going to do. And the decision is a real simple one. I'm not even really thinking about speed, underlying technologies, connectivity issues. I just know I want this much space. In that particular case, you're saying, well, they want this much speed, or maybe that's a way of saying space.
What I'm saying is, if the 5 petabyte drive came out tomorrow, well, then, of course, we'd all run out and get one. Would we buy 2? Well, maybe, yeah, for backup. Okay, for redundancy, now we'd buy 2. Well, would we buy 10 and rate them? Okay, but, at a certain point, I feel like, is somebody going to come out, well, we've got the 5.1 petabyte. You want to spend the extra dollar for, for ours? And it's like, no, actually, I don't. So at a certain point, I feel like, especially with solid-state disks, just inherently the way that the mechanism works, it's just going to lend itself towards being a speed battle when we get to that happy medium where consumers are just like, that's as much as I need. And then
when hard drive space. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, it was a little bit of lag. When hard drive space, what you're saying is so big that it absolutely positively doesn't really matter anymore, when size doesn't matter anymore in the world of hard drives, I guess. Yeah, I'd buy that. I mean, it mirrors kind of what we've experienced so far. And I mean, so which has the longer lifespan then? Would it be the solid state drive at that point?
I think it's going to be some sort of hybrid of both. At least in the data center, and I think just like Tom mentioned, with the with hard drives going kind of more towards tape, you'll see just archive systems that just kind of keep them spinning up here and there and shuffling data around, because it's just going to be so ridiculously cheap and more convenient that not to say that there won't be a holdout for tape. There will be totally that guy. But there's that guy listening right now that's like, dude, tape.
The local drive will not be meant for long-term storage. If you want to keep it for a long time, you're going to have to keep it in the cloud, because you're on a solid-state drive, and people are like, those things don't last forever. So you're going to get a new computer before that wipes out anyway. But if you want to keep it safe,
your 5,000 terabyte drive might turn into like a 4,900 terabyte drive after the first year.
Yeah,
and that's a shame to think about.
Well, yeah, especially now that I have the Super 3D HD Ultra 4K videos
virtual
that I have to rebuy all of my movies in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's move on to our long-term predictions. These are the sci-fi, weird, strange, turn your world upside down sort of predictions. 50, 100 plus years, just a little farther down the road than your short-term predictions. We'll stay with you, Darren. What's your long-term view look like?
My 2,000-year view.
2,000 years.
Is that what you're saying? Sorry. I thought you were going to go around the room again. So.
No, this is long-term. So 50, 100 plus. Your middle term.
My middle term.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Stuff right after, like a little while after you're dead.
I feel like I just called off Darren in class.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did, because I was thinking 2,000 years. So if I go ahead and give you my...
We've got the crazy-ass prediction at the end.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I guess I read the show note email a little wrong and kind of got the idea that this was the 2,000 year.
Do you have 3 predictions?
I have 3 predictions. One of them is 2,000.
Give us the second of your predictions.
Okay.
All right.
The second of my predictions, which is kind of like in the 2,000 year from now kind of thing, is that when we come back to Earth after it's actually habitable again, we'll find that that the data retention that we thought we had isn't so much, and we'll never be able to recover what it was that was civilization of now.
So all the flash drives die, and we lose our collective memory.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I like this prediction.
Like, the only thing left is like things chiseled in stone.
Because we have lots of disaster, like civilization ends prediction, but it's never based on data evaporation.
Well, it's definitely a disaster prediction. Okay, like the oil, just that we're doomed. Whatever it is, we're doomed, right? So we get off the rock, we come back. We're like, all right, you know what? We're humans. We love Earth. We totally, screwed the pooch on this one. We're gonna go to Mars or wherever, but we're gonna give it some time. We're gonna leave the AC running or something. We're gonna leave the moisture. What would we leave running?
The evaporators.
Yeah, the evaporators
on the moisture farms.
That's exactly because it's gonna be looking like Tatooine in no time. So we leave something running and hope that in 1,000 years when we come back, that we can live there again, because we're humans. And then in 1,000 years time, that civilization is in like Okay, our ancestors told us we had to go back to this place called Earth, supposedly, for some reason, because it's awesome. And I don't know why, but, it's been in the scrolls of whatever for, that time. So let's go back there and check this planet out. And supposedly our ancestors were from here, and they left us, data and other good stuff about the culture that we came from that we have since lost because we don't live on Earth anymore. And when we come back, we just find out that all the hard drives are dead.
Oh. Yeah. Sounds like a game of telephone, though, because if you're gone for 1,000 to 2,000 years, and then you're like, well, we've been told we got to go back to Earth and check out this refrigerator, and they go in there and they're going to look and they're going to see something. They're going to be like, what is this? Is this food? They're going to try and eat it because they aren't going to know. They aren't going to know because, 2,000 years removed, however many generations, all they're going to see are a bunch of little, pieces of plastic and metal. They're like, I don't know what to do with this.
If you watch the original Journey to the Center of the Earth film adaptation, there's this scene where they find what they think, I guess, is Atlantis or something. It's been a long time, so I don't remember exactly what they find. But they find this abandoned underground city, and there's all this architecture and stuff. And one of the things they find is this little sort of living area, and on it are these rectangular bread-like slabs. They look like bread, and they haven't eaten in weeks. So they're stoked, right? They're stoked. They see it, and they grab it, and they go to bite into it, and it crumbles into dust. And I can imagine, these people way off in the future coming back and going, my gosh, it's a Mac store, my HD black thing with a USB cable still working, and they grab it and it just sort of crumbles. And think of all the Word documents, and porno, and everything.
And then they tap into their cloud backup system and find that they can restore all of civilization.
Except that no one's running that because those drives are dead.
Except they lost the password.
Or their glasses broke and they've got all the books they could ever read. But
they haven't kept up on the payments. So the data's there, but it won't be released until you pay
the DRM. The DRM. Yeah.
Wow.
And even though it's like the weak sauce DRM, they just can't fathom something as low tech.
Right.
Yeah. The
128
possibly
dumb it down.
Yeah. It's like the locks in the pyramids. They're all mechanical.
Yeah,
but it's like we're just not in that mindset, so it's tough to break into those sorts of things. Eventually, brute force through. But.
Comes up on the show all the time. This issue of in the future, what do we do about the things that we're doing now? Everything's so digital, and what it requires are these black boxes with no tangible anything on them. If they don't have the power they need, and they don't have the magnetic retention they need, or whatever method of retaining data they need, and that's taken away, we have nothing to show for it. Whereas civilizations past, we have chiseled stone and we have scrolls, and they don't preserve so well, but
right,
probably better than 2,000 years of ill-treated hard drives. And so it scares me a little bit because we have an entire chunk, or we will have an entire chunk of our cultural heritage that potentially is just this volatile nothing that won't mean anything to anybody one day.
Well, not all of it. We'll still have V'ger.
Right.
That's our future.
And Steve Gibson's spin right. Which, if the hard drives don't fall apart, you'll be able to recover all the data.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if they could figure out how to power these hard drives with dirt, then they'll be fine for at least 2,000 years.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Right now, dirt doesn't work so well, but yes.
No, but they'll get there eventually.
Dirt don't hurt.
You'll see. That's like a 0.5 prediction I've got.
All right.
Or
well,
half prediction.
Speaking of your predictions, Jason, let's move over to your long-term prediction. When you look farther down the road, 100+ years, or even 2,000 years, totally fine. What are you seeing? What do you see in your crystal ball, Jason?
Let me think about this. I think I'm going to cut it back a little bit, though, because I could only really come up with a short-term prediction and a longer than short-term, but shorter than long-term prediction. So I'm kind of splitting the difference.
Do you have a second of 3 predictions, Jason?
Well, I mean, this could be 100 years. It's what's called real virtuality. And basically the idea is instead of, right now we play a game, it's generated inside the game machine. We control, those objects in the video game, and it's all, dynamically created as we're playing, all that kind of stuff. And then we have virtual reality, which is kind of, it is what you know of it. You put on the goggles, you see real things, but they're still generated by the machine. What I'm thinking is real virtuality, which is basically we're controlling real objects in a real playing field situation with real world physics and from the comfort of your home. So you put on, these goggles, and they're 3D cameras attached to actual real life, things And however they go around, be it robots that walk or balls that roll or whatever the case may be, based on the gameplay arena, and you're actually there playing the game whatever fashion that game actually dictates. Now, I mean, obviously, this is pretty expensive. And like, as I thought about this, I thought, well, there's no reason this couldn't be done now necessarily. But I'm thinking like infallible. I'm thinking like the whole experience is so well tuned and well designed. And if there's robots in there, there's no chance that robot's going to kind of tip over on its side and fall on its back in that horrible spot that it can't possibly get up from. Like, these are going to be highly tuned mechanical objects that you can control in real time and actually experience it in real time as if you were there being that object.
Wow. What do you think about that?
Just low.
We talk about video game future all the time on here. It just comes up for whatever reason, and how people interact, and virtual worlds have certainly passed our lips here and there, but nobody's ever come up with a prediction that did away with the interface. Well, there's still an interface, but did away with the graphical interface, or something being generated as true but is fake, and says, we should really just steampunk our way through and interact with real objects. And that's pretty cool. I'm trying to think of, it feels like you'd be limited a little bit. Jason, how do you see things like that limiting the imagination of, say, a designer of this kind of game, not being able to, now I can fly and we're going to the moon and I can shoot aliens in the head and the aliens behave this way, and I can't really create that physical world so much as I can just, here's me in a car accident, or here's me flying an airplane or something like that.
They'll tell us that it's a game and we're just shooting the aliens. But no, they put us to work.
Going whole Orson Scott Card on us.
Right. Virtual war. I think when I initially was kind of thinking of this, I was thinking along the lines of paintball. And, having played paintball years ago, kind of running through this arena, with things that you duck behind and ladders that you climb and guns that you shoot and everything like that. And kind of thinking, wouldn't it be awesome if you could actually play paintball but control these robots to kind of do the same thing? It would be very similar to, a first-person shooter. But it would be in a real world situation. That's why I say it would have to be fine tuned. Like, obviously there are limitations to the constructs of reality, and hopefully they would get to the point to where they could kind of creatively work their ways around that. Maybe throw a jetpack on the back of that robot, and if you really need to get out of that situation really fast, you throw that on and hope you don't hit the ceiling and fall down. And these things would have to be really durable too, right? Because if that happened and it busted into a million pieces, there goes your deposit. So.
It reminds me of the parrot drone that we saw at CES.
The flying thing.
Yeah. Because you could play a game with that with your iPhone. You would see the camera on it with your iPhone, and you tilt around to fly it. And then if you had another, like a buddy with one of those, you guys could play this kind of laser tag type game. But sounds like you're talking about a much grander scale.
Yeah, he's tying in the virtual reality suit.
Yeah,
so you're
like that.
Seeing and feeling what's happening of the device you're controlling, rather than just watching a picture. I think this is really cool. I think it's probably likely. What I wonder, Jason, is do you think it'll just be robots and inanimate objects, or will we also be able to control people?
Oh, like real actual people. Yeah, I kind of thought about that too. Like, why not play in the World Cup series, from the comfort of your home, or something like it. I don't know. That seems, that maybe that extends it beyond the 100 years, and maybe that'll be a possibility. I guess I don't see why not.
Well, because we have all those,
figure the brain out.
Yeah, we see all those stories about how you can now you can control a bug's brain remotely. I can't remember.
There's a movie about this.
Yeah,
it's called Gamer.
Well, but this is real science where they're able to tap into
the being able to play other humans.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah, that's what it was called.
So movie becomes reality.
Oh, there you go.
That's what I'm saying.
Even a bad movie becomes reality. But that I like this idea because.
Are you saying that's a bad movie, Scott?
No, it is. It's a terrible movie. But I'll say it. I love Gerard Butler. Trust me. But that movie sucked. Video games have just tried for decades now to get closer and closer to simulating something people want to do. So if it's soccer, they go buy FIFA 2010 and they play that game, and it's a limited 3/4 view, not really the same, but the crowd's great, and the graphics are nice, and it's just a way of sort of interacting with what is sort of like playing soccer. But ultimately, the reason that somebody thought it'd be a good idea to make a soccer game isn't because they wanted to play around with the limited interactions and mechanics of a handheld controller. They made it because they want to get further into the fantasy of one day people can play this on the field with real pro players. So I don't think what you're saying is crazy at all, certainly conceptually. I think that that's what people want ultimately, is to interact in a real world, or at the very least feel like it's real. So I'm a little bit more on, we'll get a way to virtually create this and never have to be physical stuff and make it seem real. And at that point, what is it, what's the difference? The same.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that too, because I think something like this, if done in the way that I'm explaining it, it's going to take a little while. It's obviously not going to happen in a very good implementation right now. So that puts us, 30, 50 years, maybe. That's why I don't know whether it's necessarily 100, or maybe it would need to be 100, because in order to get it right, you'd need all of those advancements. But by then, like you say, Scott, there's all these other advancements around virtual what's the point? What's the point of going through all of the cost of setting all this up when you can just program it?
Now, that prediction may not have been crazy, but your next one is actually required to be crazy, because it is time for the crazy ass prediction. It can be 10,000 years. It can just be wild. It's your wild card, essentially. Your craziest prediction you can come up with. Jason, what do you got?
Well, I've thought about it for a little while, and, in retrospect, maybe it's not crazy, but it's my crazy-ass prediction. Over the course of 1,000 more years, or thousands of more years, the human species will undergo a gradual but certain transformation as a new body part slowly begins to appear in man and woman as an adaptation to some universal necessity that we have. In the case of those surrounded by technology versus the Luddites of the world, the Luddites who choose a society to live without it, there's going to be a little bit of a fork in the evolutionary road of humankind as a result. Now, the question remains, what body part would that be?
USB.
I hope it's slow, like he says, real slow.
It has to be. It has to be slow.
I don't want to wake up in the morning and find my Facebook appendage, sprouting back one day.
Obviously, our hands will just evolve so that we can hold our iPhones correctly.
Yes.
We will have a gap. We'll have a gap on our
Instead of needing to cut off these two fingers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just won't have them anymore.
Yeah.
We will grow a second opposable thumb for each hand to better hold our devices with.
So are you thinking of some sort of device interface appendage here?
Yeah, initially when I thought of this, I was like, okay, we do a lot of typing, we do a lot of looking. So, looking at small text on the screen. So it was either, maybe it's something that's grown that helps us to adapt to keyboards so that we don't have to be so inefficient and move our hands as much. Like maybe it's more fingers. Or maybe, if we're looking at smaller and smaller text, our vision becomes more acute and we get to the point to where we can see really, really small text and, be able to gather that information better. If we're following these same interfaces for, thousands of years, which it's kind of ridiculous to think that would be the case. So I don't really know what it would be, but that's kind of where it started.
Maybe it wouldn't be an appendage as much as it is an ability to listen to the CPU frequency and be able to tell what's on the screen just in our minds.
Yeah, I like that.
As crazy as that is, it sounds likely.
The people that are around computers enough just start to be able to speak computer.
Yeah. I speak computer. And it's not, Old Spice man, it's not 010011.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, it's...
I used to know I speak 3 languages, English, German, and C++.
Nice. I like that. I like that prediction. I think that's a good prediction. If suitably vague to allow for it to go in a lot of different ways. So, when we check back with you in 10,000 years to find out the accuracy, you've got some wiggle room. I think that's smart.
I'll show you my new appendage. How about that?
Yeah. We'll probably just
not on the podcast.
Touch appendages and transfer the information.
Evolutionary scientists would argue that this is the way we naturally get mutations, right? Enough exposure over enough time, you start to have selective change, and it starts to happen, and before you know it, this sort of thing happens. I don't think it's far-fetched at all.
Yeah, there just has to be a survival mechanism to encourage it, right? You have to have not a survival mechanism so much as a reproductive advantage. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that any of the appendages we've surmised would necessarily give you a reproductive advantage.
But you never know.
I don't know. There's a lot of geek girls out there, though.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
There are.
And if so,
They're
then I won't
awesome.
talk about it when I come back on 10,000 years from now.
All right.
That's the case.
Let's move on over to Darren. The crazy ass prediction, your wildest prediction, make it a doozy, or as we would like to call it, number 3 of 3.
Okay. All right. You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm all ready for this.
It's going to happen here in the future. I'm going to say around, let's just say September 30th. So in 2 months,
Wow.
Apple is going to make a rev to the iPhone 4 that doesn't have the gap problem. Maybe it will be some sort of a coding. Maybe it will be some sort of a re-engineering. Maybe they'll move the gap. Maybe they'll bring it all internal. But they'll really play it down, and then they'll just kind of like slip it in there, just kind of like, oh, hey, I got my new Xbox, and this one has like a different chipset. It kind of runs cooler than the other ones. You know, it'll be
And
one
will
of
you be
those
able to
things.
exchange your old one for it?
No.
Oh.
No, because the 30-day window will have been gone.
Uh-huh.
And also, September 30th is when you can't get any more free bumpers. So
Right.
that's why I'm thinking September 30th, that's when we're going to start to see in the supply chain a couple of, hey, is that a little glossiness right there? Did somebody just put some nail polish on? And this is why it's a crazy-ass prediction, is because this would never happen. Because that would be admitting that they had a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're wrong. I think it is going to happen. I don't think it's crazy ass at all.
I think you're wrong that your prediction is not going to happen.
I think that's totally going to happen. That's
No,
gonna
the way
roll-
that I phrased it was that I win either way.
That's true.
Yeah.
You kind of tricked us all. But truth is, though, that's going to totally happen. I guarantee it. And that's why I should wait. That's why I've waited so far. I should keep waiting.
Yeah, everybody always says, hey, hold out for second gen. I mean, you look at iPhone 3G, 3GS, oh yeah, second gen's better.
MLT Hazy's like, the extra thumbs made more sense than that.
You know what? Yeah.
That's more likely.
Yeah.
I like.
In fact, they could fix it at this point and be like, Steve, we found a way that we can fix all the iPhone 4s and we can just kind of slip them into the supply stream and then everybody will be happy. No.
Put it in the 5.
No.
Put it in 5.
Yeah,
Put it in the 4G,
exactly.
yes. Or 4G, or whatever we're going to call the next one. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do a rev to this.
Not doing a rev. Ain't going to happen. Keep it under your hat.
Yep.
Don't tell Jason Shine. I also think that I think that I like the fact that you went crazy near term.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we've had
Do you guys
happen
ever get
before.
near terms?
No. Crazy is almost always long term.
Wow.
I'm trying to think. I don't think we've ever had one that wasn't.
We may have had something nearer term, like in the 50-100 realm.
I've got like an hour prediction, like a prediction in the next hour, maybe 2 hours.
Really? That
Dinner.
would be the nearest term prediction we've ever had.
Just going to throw down and say dinner.
You're going to eat dinner within the next hour?
Next 2 or 3.
Tie him up.
All right. You got to make it crazy ass and say it'll be Taco Bell or something.
No, it will not. It most definitely will not be.
All restaurants will be Taco Bell in the future.
In the future,
though. We do
yes.
know that.
Okay.
If we
You're
know
going there.
nothing else,
Yep.
we do know that. Jason, you haven't weighed in on this yet, though. What do you think? Is this possible at all, or is it, as Darren says, entirely crazy?
I think it's very possible that Apple is going to come out with a revision to the phone, not make a big fuss about it, and the phone's going forward. And who knows what that revision is, if it's nail polish over the gap or whatever. But yeah, I think it's very possible.
Revision 2.
That's what I.
Has anyone tried the nail polish over the gap? Would that actually work?
I know, right?
Yeah, dude,
It's
why
always
not?
thrown around,
That's like the
but
first thing I thought.
I don't
Is
know.
like, dude, like put a little like clear nail. In fact, I don't carry around clear nail polish, but I get this Band-Aid stuff for like little cuts, and it's totally clear nail
I
polish.
used to use that on
Everybody knows.
Chiggers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So why wouldn't it work on
Why
an
wouldn't it
iPhone
work
4
on an
guy?
iPhone? I mean,
Yeah.
Chigger, iPhone, come on.
Virtually the same thing.
They both bug you.
A little pest that burrows its way into you and you can't get rid of it.
We're talking Apple
And
here.
it's an itch you can never stop scratching.
There you go. You have summed up Apple so much. That's the love-hate relationship that you have with
That's
Chiggers
true.
and Apple.
Apple is a chigger.
Yes.
All right, now time for 4 questions. This is the segment where we hit each of our guests rapid-fire style with 4 questions about the future. They're not allowed to stop and think, but rather tap into the communal energy of the space-time continuum, answer from the gut, and therefore give us, if not a more accurate prediction, at least a more entertaining one. And we shall start, Mr. Kitchen, with you, with questions asked by Scott Johnson. Scott, I hand it over to you.
Okay, I always ask before we start, are you sitting comfortably? But I know you're sitting in the Twit offices / studios, and I know that it's like the best air conditioning on planet Earth, so I don't even have to ask. You're doing fine. All right, here we go. One of these had to swap out because you totally did it, one of your predictions. First up, will Quake ever be the ubiquitous video card benchmark standard again? If not, what will?
Don't think, just answer.
No, it will not be. And
Just talk.
I'm going to go with
Say anything.
some sort of Wolfenstein 3D.
All right, back to go back a few generations. All right, the next one was going to be about the future of storage media, but I'm throwing that out in favor of. Instead, what is Kitchen and Howell a better name for? Law offices or a home improvement store?
Law offices. In fact, you're on to us. I'm just going to put that out there. Jason, did you get the domain yet? Because
Yeah, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
And we got our first client.
if you got busted for hacking, or as Jason knows about phone freaking, you need to talk to Kitchen and Howell.
Yeah, all today.
If you want the best Halloween kitchen, stop by Kitchen and Howell.
No.
It just doesn't work, huh? All right, fine.
All right, here we go.
Thanks.
That's the second to last question. When we have elevators to the moon, and we know they're coming, what will be the Muzak tune as you go? And by the way, elevator or love in an elevator is not allowed. So anything but that.
The girl from Iwo Jima.
Oh,
Sweet.
nice.
Good answer.
Isn't that Ipanema?
Ipanema. Iwo Jima.
No, Girl from Iwo Jima would be a better song.
Oh, sorry.
It's a mashup.
That
Some
needs to be
sort.
made.
I don't even know of what.
That needs
You're
to be
right.
made.
You're right. It was. Yep.
All right.
Tall and
Lastly,
tan and young and victorious.
if you had your very own super collider, what would you name it, and what gender would you assume it to be?
Thor male. I don't know.
Dude, look how fast that was. Holy
But
crap.
it wasn't a good answer. It was a quick one.
Thor mail.
Well, that's
Thor male, the destroyer.
It's going to be my new startup.
Thor mail. It's a new an email client.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the god of all email clients.
It's fast and destructive.
It's like what I did to my Gmail this morning. Yeah. The Thor mail will just, if you haven't read it in 24 hours, Thor mail. It's gone.
God.
Sorry.
I like it. See, we've developed a startup funding.
Love it.
We need a little
And-
angel funding now.
And you got lawyers on board, too.
And Kitchen and Howell can vet it for
Kitchen
us.
and Howell will take over.
Excellent. Very well done. Very well done. Let's move over to Jason Howell. Time for 4 questions. Jason, are you sitting comfortably?
I'm trying.
Good. Then we'll begin. Question number 1. What will Radiohead's business model be in the year 2020?
They are going to be they're going to go a little retro. They're going to start mailing out their tracks as individual tracks on CDs to their fans in the actual snail mail.
All right, I like it.
They're going to create a new business model out of that.
Will you be able to still choose what you pay for them?
Well, you have to pay for the stamp, but aside from that, no, they don't take anything else. They'll be filthy rich by then.
Question
If they
number
aren't
2. What occupation will your daughter have when she's your age?
Oh man. She's going to be a mechanic on the space elevator.
On the space elevator. She'll be installing the Girl from Iwo Jima tunes.
She's going to be plugging in Pandora, and it will just so happen that the Girl from Iwo Jima will be playing on the space elevator.
Which will be the latest track from Radiohead.
That's right, mailed directly to Pandora.
With the
on
return
CD.
address that says, thanks for accepting our CD that you didn't ask for, but here's a self-addressed stamped envelope. Just put whatever you think we deserve for it, and send it to the retirement homes. What is this?
If you'd like to unsubscribe, here's our Thor mail address.
Totally unrelated note. Clint Eastwood is working on letters from Ipanema right now.
Good.
All right.
He can do it well.
Question number 3. Will you elect to become a robot if offered, and why?
Oh, heck yeah, I'd become a robot. I think it would be pretty sweet because if I became a robot or at least became controllable by other people via a game controller, then I might actually be the one that we were talking about earlier with the whole real virtuality thing. And, hey, we could be, setting a trend, blazing a path, if you will.
I see the IRC crowdsourced Jason Howell superhero, as different people have different skills. They can take him over as will. When Jason Howell needs Kung Fu Man takes over Jason Howell.
If Jason Howell needs a lawyer, Jason Howell becomes a lawyer.
Yes.
Except every once in a while you get some guy in the chat room who really doesn't know what he's talking about, and then you're like a really crappy lawyer all of a sudden. You have to be careful. All right, question number 4. When and why will UFC be the most popular sport in the galaxy?
in the galaxy. It's going to be at least 200 years. And I think that's primarily because in order for it to be the most popular in the galaxy, aliens are going to have to at least come visit Earth and recognize that they like the UFC. First, they're going to have to get past the, the normal, hello, Mr. President, I'm here, I come in peace, not shoot to kill type thing. But eventually, as they kind of start to coexist on the planet, this is like 200, maybe 250 years from now, that's about the time that they're going to be able to actually experience with their four eyes, and actual four eyes, they're not wearing glasses, the UFC. And I think once they see the power of the UFC, they're going to want to get involved.
Will they be forced to conform to a standard of appendages?
Yes, I believe that, it has to be equal. At least, your abilities can be different, but the number of appendages used inside the octagon has to be the same. So there might be a little bit of duct tape involved to kind of tape down the appendages to make sure that, everything's got to be fair. Come on.
And Crack Zahn is going to have to tie down that third arm tonight.
Which third arm will he tie down?
It'll be 13, a 13 count every time somebody has to get counted down. I love it. Your alien future intrigues me.
Yes, it's a beautiful world, and I'm definitely scared of it, too.
When can I visit your alien future? But that would be a fifth question, and it's only 4 questions, so well done, both of you. You've survived 4 questions. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been terrific fun.
Don't forget to leave us comments at our website, fourcastpodcast.com, and we may read it on the show. Thank you, Darren Kitchen. Let people know where they can find you on the web.
I'm on the Twitters at HAK5 Darren and HAK5.org.
And, of course, don't miss Hack 5 at revision3.com/Hack5.
That's the one. Check out all the fun hacker stuff we do every week.
Jason Howell, pick something from your well-played hand of internet ventures to let people know about.
My catalog. Well, I have to mention Buzz Out Loud, CNET's daily tech news podcast, bol.cnet.com, Android Atlas, which you can also find at CNET, and my Twitter ID is Raygun01 if you want to follow me there.
All right. And, of course, me and Scott are on this show every week right here at Twit. We do it live, just like Bill O'Reilly, every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And, of course, Scott, there's plenty of ways they can follow you when they're not watching FourCast, right?
Indeed. In fact, today I think I'll point them to my up-and-coming video game podcast called The Final Score. We're on our 15th or so episode, and I think people, if you're into video games, whether they're controlling real objects or not, that's the show you want to listen to. That's at finalscoreshow.com, and they can follow me on Twitter as usual. That's twitter.com/extralife.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Don't forget our email address, fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to send us your predictions, please do. The shorter they are, the more chance they are to be read, but we read them all anyway. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
But it's only 32 years away.
Oh, I thought it was going to continue going.
Nope. That's the end.
That's what most people say at the end of our show. Oh,
I was going to do a couple of head spins and maybe the worm.
That's all it is? Oh.
Not now.
I thought that show was longer. Thought it was more interesting. Oh well.
But it's only 32 years away.